Hey, everybody, welcome to the Orange and Brown Talk podcast, our live post-game edition here. Browns losing to the Ravens 41-17. If you're watching on YouTube, feel free to jump in and interact with us in the chat. I'll feature some of the comments as long as they're nice enough. You'll see them pop up on screen, but you've got to behave yourselves if you want to be shown on the screen. We're going to do the three of us here off the top, and then we're going to have Lance Reisland come on a little bit later. He's going to bring us home. And no matter who's talking, we're going to be talking about the Browns losing to the Ravens 41-17. And Mary Kay, here we are. Week 2 is in the books, and we're already asking Kevin Stefanski the question, are you considering a quarterback change? Because Joe Flacco struggled today. Dylan Gabriel came in for a series. I mean, it is what it is. This is what happens when it's 41-17, and we knew there was a time limit on the Joe Flacco experience. Maybe not 2 weeks, but here we are at least asking the question. Kevin Stefanski, though, is going to stick with Joe.
Yeah, I think the reason why we're asking the question is because in a game like this, Joe turned the ball over twice. He had a horrible interception this game. It wasn't like last week where they were deflections and they couldn't really all be pinned on Joe. That was a really bad interception that he had there, and that led to a touchdown by Nate Wiggins. And then he also lost the ball on a sack fumble. And those are the kinds of things that he cannot do. He can't be turning the ball over 2 times per game, especially when the defense isn't getting any of those takeaways yet. So I think that's why we're asking the question. But I do think the more that I think about this right now, they're heading into a very grueling stretch right now. They're in it as we speak, but they've got a lot of tough games coming up. They've got a big road stretch coming up. They've got a trip to London. They've got 3 NFC North really tough playoff defenses coming up. So I do think it's the right thing. What you don't want to do is rush a rookie into action with a young, inexperienced football team that's making a lot of mistakes and dropping a lot of passes. I just don't think now is the time to do it. So I agree with the decision to stick with Joe Flacco for now, but it's going to get to the point at some time this season where they're going to say, all right, let's see what these rookies can do.
Yeah, I'm at the same place. I mean, like I said, there is a limit to Joe Flacco. There was going to come a point where you had to move on from Joe Flacco. I think after today, maybe you move that line a little bit closer to where we are than maybe where you thought it was before. But Ashley, this Green Bay team that is coming to town next Sunday, I think they're better than the team the Browns played today. Now, they don't have a Lamar Jackson at quarterback, right? There are areas where the Ravens are better. But I think defensively that team is better. I think they have, honestly, maybe better weapons all around. I don't know. We could argue about some of the fringes there, I guess. But one thing's for sure is that is a really, really good Green Bay defense that has shut down Detroit and has shut down Washington. And that's a big ask for Dylan Gabriel. And I'm not one of these guys who's like, well, I mean, it's always going to be hard whenever he's got to make his first start. That would be a really big ask to throw him into the fire next week. And frankly, I don't think one bad game from Joe should necessarily merit just tossing him aside.
Yeah, and I mean, to your point about the Green Bay defense, like I definitely think they're better than the Ravens, and I thought the Ravens gave the Browns offense a lot of issues today, but I do think, look, Green Bay has a better secondary, first of all. The fact that they held the Commanders to 18 points, I think it was, beat them by 2 scores, like that Washington offense is much more explosive. Again, that word's going to come up again this week, than this Cleveland offense is. Like, it's by design. It's because of what Jaden Daniels can do. So it's a tall order coming up. And yes, I agree. I think that you kind of have to stick with Joe Flacco's veteran presence for this one, because you don't want things to really go sideways, I think, for Dylan Gabriel if they were to come out and say, oh yeah, we're starting him against the Packers and this amazing defense that they have. And things go sideways and either he gets hurt, worst case scenario, or the confidence gets shaky because of a poor outing. All of that is kind of always, I think, a possibility with a rookie quarterback when you're going up against one of the league's best defenses. So I think it's good they got him some time today at the end of the game. but I don't think it's the worst thing in the world to stick with Joe right now, just given this stretch of games they are in.
And Mary, yeah, I mean to that point, and Mary Kay, you were saying it too. Like, it's not just Green Bay coming up. Green Bay on 10 days rest, by the way. It is. You're going to have to go to Detroit. You're going to have to go to London. They're going to leave for London on like Wednesday night. That's going to feel, even though it's a normal week, that's going to feel like a short week. So I do think as long as Joe and look, the way Joe played today was unacceptable. You can't have quarterback performances like that. If he plays like that again next week, then I do think this becomes a real discussion. Like, is it just time? But you really do, if you can just get through a few weeks of having this calming veteran influence, and I don't know that it's going to lead to wins, but you got to at least try. I, I think that's why I'm hesitant to sit here and pound the table and say, no, put Joe Flacco on the bench. It's time to look at these rookies. I think it's going to happen soon. I think today was a reminder it's going to happen sooner than I think everyone planned. But there's still no rush to me right now.
If you're going to stick with your young kicker, or at least your new kicker, after he missed 2 kicks last week and essentially cost you the football game, then certainly you can give your starting quarterback, who's been in this league for 18 years, another week to overcome a mistake-filled game like this. So I do think that they need to exercise some patience and not jump the gun and try to turn it over to Dylan too fast, because what's your alternative after that? You'd either have to go back to Joe, or then you're talking about almost the unthinkable right now, and that is turning it over to Shedeur. And from everything that we've heard from everyone, he's not ready for that opportunity yet. So that's why that is on the shelf right now. So I think they want to take their time, and they should take their time. This is also a case for why I might have kept Kenny Pickett, because if things didn't work out with Joe early on, maybe you do a little interim thing where you go with Kenny for 4 or 5 games, and then you go to your rookies in the second half of the season. So that's why I kind of question that decision, especially because you only got a 5th round pick out of it for that. But I think their feeling at that point was like, you know what, if we're done with Joe, we might as well take a look at the rookies. So I get the wisdom there, but I think I may have tried something else in this regard.
Yeah, and I'm going to put a comment up here from Howard, who says they're going 0-6 anyway. Joe hasn't played a good game in 2 years. He's not good anymore. I mean, look, I know a lot of fans are going to look at this and say, hey, they're not going to win these games anyway. Throw a rookie out there. I understand from a fan perspective how you might think like that. But we just listened to Myles Garrett today call this game embarrassing, and he used some more colorful language than that. And there are veterans in that locker room. This is the choice the Browns made, trying to straddle that line. It's actually been a topic all week on this podcast, trying to straddle that line between sort of rebuilding and also, not doing a complete teardown. You do have guys in that locker room that the minute you turn this thing over, they're going to say like, they're not going to give up, but you're sending a message to that locker room like, okay, this is different now. We're not necessarily trying to win games. And even though Joe Flacco didn't play well enough to win, Ashley, we know there's a trust there with him. We know there's a belief there with him. So again, from the fan standpoint, I see what Howard is saying, but you can't say that to your locker room.
Yeah, I feel like I saw a bunch of that sentiment coming from fans today. I mean, for me, it's what you said, Dan. It's also what I said earlier, this idea about when you do get a look at Dillon Gabriel and Shedeur Sanders, you want them to be, I think, in as good of a position as possible. That's like with their own development. That's where you're at in the schedule. You don't want to put them in too soon and have what happened to one or both of them, what happened to Dorian Thompson-Robinson, I think, a few years ago, where he just went in against the Ravens in week 4, whatever it was, and looked totally overwhelmed. So I think that is really what you just want to avoid, even though I know fans get to a point where it's like, well, why are we doing the same thing? Why, like, that's the definition of insanity. Why are we doing the same thing and expecting a different result? I just think that for as tough as this schedule is, if you think they're going to go 0-6 or maybe only win 1 or 2 games in this stretch, I think right now, you can look at the schedule and say that's feasible. But I think no matter what, Joe Flacco is better suited to handle everything that comes with that and to keep the football team together. And that is going to be important if you start the season 2-4 or somewhere around there, right? Like that part of it matters too.
Yeah, and to Howard's point, he's saying in the chat, like the players know, right? Like when the performance is bad, the players know, right? Like these guys aren't dumb, but I don't think they're to that point yet, right? I don't think they're to that point of like, oh man, we're giving up on Joe Flacco. So that's sort of how I would view it in that locker room, but it could change quickly if he continues to perform poorly. Now we got to talk about this, Mary Kay. So we talked to the third string quarterback today, Shedeur Sanders, which is a very strange thing to do after a 41-17 loss to Baltimore when he was the inactive third stringer and didn't get in the game. But of course, there was this report before the game from ESPN that Shedeur Sanders told the Ravens not to draft him. They were going to pick him at 141. He didn't want them to draft him because he wanted to go somewhere where he could play. Obviously, 3 picks later, the Browns traded up and they picked Shedeur Sanders. So Shedeur talked after the game. He was asked about the report. He kind of didn't answer the question, kind of said it's, he's focused on now. I asked him like directly, so did this happen? And he said, you wouldn't know this, but my mind doesn't remember. I'm paraphrasing a little here. My mind doesn't remember 5 months ago, like post-draft, doesn't remember anything. He's just focused on the now. This was just a bizarre situation. This was, and Kenny is asking in the chat, why are we even talking about Shedeur? Well, we're talking about Shedeur because this report came out and then Shedeur had to address it. And that's just sort of how this works. And it just felt very like for this to be happening in week 2, where we're talking to Shedeur, there's this pregame report and we're talking about should the Browns change quarterbacks. Man, it feels like we got to this point really quickly.
We really did. I mean, we've got a long way to go before the wheels should be coming off. I mean, we just cannot do this kind of stuff right now. But the thing that stands out to me about Shedeur's answer to this question is the fact that he did not say no. He did not deny it. He did not say, I never said that. And if the Sanders camp wanted that shut down, I think they would shut it down, and maybe they still will try to shut it down somehow. Maybe we'll hear something from Dion, or maybe we'll hear something from someone else. But as of right now, Shedeur did not shut down that report. Now, does he even know if that would have happened? Would he have been the one to say, no, I don't want to go to Baltimore? Or would that have been above his pay grade in that moment? Would that have been his agent, his father, whatever? So we don't even know for sure if he would have known that happened, right? I mean, I think that's something to consider here. So I don't think we necessarily have heard the last of this, but again, it's interesting. It was an interesting report because we know that these guys kind of wanted to dictate some things. And if Shedeur wanted to come to Cleveland because he thought he had a good chance to play here, well, that's not quite working out the way that he thought it was going to either.
Yeah, Ashley, I'm curious what you kind of thought as this all went down, as we see this report. I mean, this has happened, but we're used to this, right? The Browns are very often subjects of these national insider Sunday morning news dumps, especially going back to like the 1-31 years. It would feel like in December there was always something new about the Cleveland Browns on Sunday morning. But here's this report, and somebody, just to address this in the chat, somebody said, well, he didn't have to talk about it, so you asked him. We asked him because he has a right to address that report. Like if something is said about him, he should have an opportunity to address that. Now, that person in the chat probably isn't going to agree with me because I see the name and think I see that person on Twitter a lot. But I'm just saying that's why we asked him, because he has a right to address that and either not answer it, explain it, say it didn't happen, whatever. Like that's just how we do things in sports media. So anyway, what were you thinking, Ashley, when that was all going down?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, that's a great way to put it. As I follow like basketball as well too, I think that exact thing is a problem like the WNBA fans and players have run into before, like not understanding, well, why are you asking me about something controversial? Well, it's because like you have a right to debunk it or whatever, right? Like you want the person who it's about to have that chance to refute it or say, yep, I 100% agree with that or stand by what it did, whatever. That's like journalism 101 in a lot of ways. But Yeah, my first reaction was, why is this coming out now? I mean, I think the obvious answer is the Browns played the Ravens today, right? I just still like I don't know the answer to that either. Maybe you guys have more thoughts on it than I do, but I genuinely, other than the fact that they played today, maybe that is all it was. Like what is the purpose of leaking somebody like that when you have these leaks that happen, especially in this business, especially in the NFL? You're always kind of wondering, like, what is the source of this potentially? And what is the reason that that potential source would want that information out there at that specific time, right? Because that's how it works. So that really was just me, and then obviously wondering if you guys were going to get a chance to talk to him, and I'm glad you did. Look, like, Shedeur knows how this stuff works. He's used to being in the spotlight more than a lot of these young guys, more than I think any other rookie I've covered. He handles it all really well. I think, not being there, he handled this really well today, and that's not surprising. But for me, it's like, why now, and where did this come from? Was my first thought.
Yeah, it's it's he did a good job. As with everything, all these things that kind of swirl around, none of them are like his fault, and when they come up, he handles it pretty well. Uh, Mary Kay, anything else you wanna? You're gonna jump off here, but I guess your closing statement here, Shedeur, the Browns, whatever you want to say here before, and we'll do a Hey MK as well on Monday. So we'll get to talk a little more about this. But your closing statement here.
I think they're a really young football team. I think they are a really, really young football team in a lot of areas. You even saw that in the back end when Denzel Ward went out. Now with Martin Emerson out of the lineup, then you are really down into your depth in the secondary, and that was huge. Lamar Jackson threw 3 touchdown passes in the second half, and they were powerless to stop him. They were powerless because they were trying to stop him with Cam Mitchell and Miles Harden. And that's just not really going to cut it against the level of talent that you're dealing with there with Lamar Jackson and with those kind of receivers that he has, those veteran receivers. That's a tough spot for those young guys to be in. You're supposed to be throwing against Denzel Ward and Greg Newsome for the most part. And a lot of the times you were throwing against Cam Mitchell, who gave up 3 touchdowns, and Miles Harden. It was a huge name of the game tonight. But they have youth at so many different positions, and I think it's showing up. Maybe they'll get better as the season goes along. I would like to think for their sake that Denzel Ward will be there for them most of the time. They really were hurting without him today, and I thought their youth showed up in a lot of other areas today.
Okay. Mary Kay's going to jump off. Ashley's going to jump off. Lance Reisland, I'm actually going to let in the room here shortly, so I'll let you guys go. Like I said, we'll do a Hey MK on Monday, so we'll get to do this a little more. Lance, of course, if you don't know, Lance Reisland is our film guy, so he'll be jumping on here momentarily. So I'm actually going to hit that button right now. And let's see if I can pull this off live. See how smooth I can make this. So there's Lance.
Hi,
all right.
How are you?
Yeah, we are just as you're saying hi, Lance. We're going to say goodbye to Mary Kay, and we're going to say goodbye to Ashley. So
goodbye.
All right, that was smooth. I thought that was pretty smooth. I'm just
Nice.
saying. I thought I handled that well, right?
Absolutely.
Okay, Lance. There are people in the chat who want us to talk about this Browns offense. It was a struggle today.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you've had a chance to rewatch the game yet, if you've just watched it initially, but what were your thoughts on the, like, what was missing from this offense today? Was it as simple as the turnovers? Was it just, were they just bad offensively? Could they not run the ball? What was it?
Well, no, I thought they did okay job running the ball. I thought you saw progression from last week. I mean, they weren't great. You can see Junkins is not going to fix it, but he's going to help it. I thought the offensive line played better. The tackles are really struggling, and DeJuan Jones is struggling in drive blocking. He was okay in pass protection today. The other side is really, really struggling. Lucas is really, really struggling. He's having trouble moving his feet in a small area, things that I did not see with him with the Commanders last year when I was breaking down his film. And you and I had a couple pods on some of their free agent pickups, and I thought he was really good. And I thought he's a great pickup because of what he could do. He could pass block, he could run zone. So I'm a little bit shocked on where he's at. Maybe he's regressed, or maybe he's just not getting it yet. But that would be okay. And then obviously the turnovers are killer, right? And the first thing I did was I watched the film. I started breaking it down. They didn't drive on the Browns defense, and the offense is absolutely destroying. And then the special teams. So once again, you and I have talked about the three phases. They're losing two phases, and they're winning. I mean, you think about it. Joe Burrow and Lamar Jackson, they shut down. And then they shut down Henry, and you're 0-2. So as a football coach, I'm going in tomorrow, and I have to find positives, because there is a lot of negatives. And positive are, regardless of who you play, you've shut down the best of the best. Now you just got to figure out this offense, and it's just not good. And it shows you the how minimal with offsides and things like that, how like that little margin for error is so crucial with this offense. They just don't have enough playmakers, and I don't think Njoku's touching the ball enough. And that I'll stand on that mountain. He's still the guy, in my opinion.
Yeah, they didn't get him involved. I mean, it seems like they tried to a little bit. I do want to respond to something left over. Somebody asked, because we're talking about the Shedeur thing before you came on, and somebody asked, did we talk to Dillon Gabriel? We did talk to Dillon Gabriel too, just so you know. We talked to Dillon Gabriel about finally getting into a game, all that stuff. So anyway, with Njoku. So I think Njoku is interesting. And I've always had sort of an up and down relationship as a David Njoku viewer. So sometimes, like, you see it, right? You see how big he is. You see the size. You see that ability to go get the football. You see that ability to win, right? And then other times you kind of watch and you're like, where's David Njoku been for a while? How much of that is his fault? How much of that is the quarterback? Stuff like that, I don't know. But one of my concerns coming into this year was, like, David last year had a down year, and he was hurt a lot last year. This is a guy that's going to be 30 soon. He's been in the league since 2018. Like, he's got some wear and tear on that body. And I wondered if we might see a step back from Njoku this year. It's way too early after 2 games to say that. But you do wonder if maybe we're starting to trend that way a little bit. And you know, are we going to see like what peak Njoku was in 2023?
See, I think a couple of catches he's had, the couple run after catches, I still think it's there. I still think he's got a number of quality years. So what I really see though is that, and maybe you'll agree with me, but Njoku is one of those players, and regardless who or what level you're at, you have certain players. You want all players. You want everybody to just be motivated, and regardless of what happens, you're all about the team. And he's a great team guy, but he's also a guy that kind of gets lost when he's not involved early. And when he doesn't get involved early, he kind of, just gets lost, like you said. The question I was asked today, well, if they're not stretching the ball downfield, they're playing 2 high hats and they're able to stop the run with 4-man front, et cetera, et cetera. They have a lot of checkdowns and a lot of things they're doing, and you can make Njoku the checkdown guy. So if they're struggling with the ball vertically, then make him the checkdown guy. Formation-wise, whatever you're doing, you've done that before with him. But he's got to be the guy. If you're throwing those little checkdowns, those little 3-route routes, that will get him going. And he's a guy, it's like a wind-up toy. Once he gets going, he's really hard to stop. But if you don't get him involved early, he kind of gets lost. And he doesn't. It's not that he's not playing hard. It's just that he's not involved in what they're doing. And then you can kind of see him go away.
So let's talk a little bit more about this offense, because it just felt like everything was hard today. And I feel like part of that was, and this was something I was worried about. The Cincinnati Bengals gave up 250 yards of offense in the first half today against Jacksonville and 400 for the game. That is a bad defense that the Browns played last year. I think we're going to see that trend continue throughout. They're going to give up big numbers. And the Browns are kind of able to get what they wanted against that defense. And my concern was this Baltimore defense, while it has some flaws, it's a more physical group. We saw what that front was doing, how they were getting pressure on Joe Flacco. I just felt like physically there was a chance this could be a bad matchup. And then a week from now, well, buddy, it's going to get really hard. And I think that came to fruition a little bit today. Like, you played a more physical and just a better defense than you played last week. And this offense got stuck in the mud.
Well, I'll tell you what, watching it, I tried to rewind it, and I wanted to be done before you and I got on. So I have a lot more film work to do on these guys tonight. But the thing that I saw up front, though, is I did see some movement, and I saw some little bit of nastiness inside. So they did not knock the Ravens off the ball. That's not what I'm saying. But last week they struggled moving those defensive tackles from the Bengals off the ball. They did that a little bit better today. Now, they didn't do it wonderfully, but they had some decent movement and some decent runs. And what I saw today from the Ravens is that if teams are going to play too high and keep everything in front, what is really hard to do is it's hard to create explosives right now. That's why I think Njoku has to get involved. If you go back to like the Jets game where they check it down to him and he went down the sideline, things like that, they have to create explosives, and their explosive right now are going to be run after catch because of the fact they're getting these too high safeties. That's the first thing I saw. So I did think obviously the Ravens defense was better, but I also thought the Browns up front were better. They just can't string things together. And when you have to be perfect, and I've said this to you before, if you have to go 10 to 20 plays every time you score, it gets really hard. I'm looking at as I start to do my breakdown, the Ravens' first 10 points came on. They went 24 yards for a field goal and 24 yards for a touchdown. They went 48 yards and they got 10 points. Well, that's not extremely hard in the NFL. So that's what the Browns, that's what they have to figure out. That's a puzzle piece they got to figure out moving forward is how do I get run after catch? How do I get, because I did think, I will say as a football coach, I did see improvement up front, and hopefully Junkins continues to help with that as they move forward.
Yeah, I will say, look, I know he wasn't like spectacular today. He ended with 10 for 61. He did have that long run late. I thought Judkins looked different than the other guys today. You could see like, okay, once he kind of gets his rhythm, if this offensive line can get everything figured out, like you might be able to get that run game going with him a little bit. So I think that was a positive. You mentioned it, the short fields. And credit to this defense. After that long touchdown to Hopkins, well, it wasn't a touchdown. Might have been a touchdown, but whatever, they took it off the board. Credit to this defense for bowing up and holding them to a field goal. Like this defense for 3 quarters played really well, and then I just think ran out of gas. Depth in the secondary was an issue after Denzel left the game. But when you talk about those short fields, we got to talk about an area that I know is near and dear to your heart and something you've talked about before. Like if this football team has to be good on special teams, maybe not even good, they have to be great on special teams. And today they almost gave up a punt return touchdown. They allowed a punt to get blocked. First Ravens blocked punt since I think 2016. If I remember right, it was the press box announcement. I wrote it down, but I don't have those notes with me right now. That sets up the short field. And so they lose DeAndre Carter, right? I got a little nervous watching Isaiah Bond try to field punts. I don't know how it looked on TV, but it looked like he was struggling a little bit trying to field some of those punts. So they got to get that figured out too. I mean, we're talking about the special teams were not very good today, and the kicker made all his kicks. And that's a concerning thing here. Like this team, like I say over and over again, just does not have a margin for error. And if you're not going to be good or great on special teams, you're gonna really struggle.
If you look at it, so you got the fumble for a touchdown, not on the defense. You got the interception down to 5, not on the defense. You got the punt block, not on the defense. You have these points that are given up, but the Browns defense gave up 41. I really don't think. I think they played very well against arguably the best offense in football right now. But you're absolutely right. And one of the things that kills, obviously. One of my biggest points, and that's why I made such a big thing with special teams. And I'll never forget our playoff game is you block a punt. You block a punt, you win the game 80% of the time at all levels of football. It's the most crazy stat in football. Block a punt, block a punt, block a punt, you win the game. So not only that, so that's an obvious one. The kickoff return was an obvious one. But the one that you brought up, Dan, that I think is super important is the lost hidden yardage that when Carter went out, if you think about a couple of those punts that Bond, first of all, did not look very secure when he caught the ball, but a couple of those punts he let hit and roll. Though that's what you call hidden yardage. So all of a sudden you have an offense that's struggling, can get the ball on the 50. Now they get it down to 30. So now instead of have to go 50 yards for a touchdown, now they got to go 70. And those percentages are crazy in terms of every 5 yards you add. So I don't, that's the thing. They're not even able to make it a wash right now. And if you don't have great special teams, I always told my staff, try to make it a wash, meaning they don't win, we don't win, it's a wash, and then we can come down to offense and defense. They're actually losing that. So they're losing offense, and then really what they're losing is special teams. So they have dominated one phase through 2 games. They've dominated one phase, and I will stand strong on that because of the offenses they face. They've dominated, and yet they've been dominated on the offense side of the ball, and their special teams have been anything but special. So they're going to have to iron that out. They're going to have to win hidden yardage. They're going to have to do all those things because they have to. And the offense will get better, but the special teams, to me, that's an inexcusable kind of thing that they're messing up right now.
Yeah, and like that's an area that's supposed to be better. I mean, they've made real investments there. This team is they're healthy right now. So it's not even like they're like the guys on this roster are guys that you looked at and said, yeah, we can use that guy on coverage. We can use that guy here, right? Like we can use Ronnie Hickman as the personal punt protector. I mean, Ronnie Hickman is a big part of this team. You chose him, and then he just gets bowled over by that Ravens player. Like
absolutely destroyed. I mean, it was really something.
Yeah, we're not even talking about 10 weeks from now when you're really pulling guys, from the bottom of the roster. It can get really tough with special teams. So
you just said it best. He punts one of the best punters in the league, and he made every kick, and it was a terrible day on special teams. That's a great point by you. I mean, how did that happen?
Yeah, Corey Borges had a pretty good day, right?
Made every kick,
obviously there was the punt block, but that wasn't his fault.
I mean, that's a great point. He pins people inside the 10, has 3 long punts every game. Kicker. I mean, once again, and I want to. He was special today. I don't think there's anybody in the NFL had more pressure. I mean, he was kicking for his job today, and he did a great job. So they did that, and they still lost special teams. That's incredible.
Okay, I'm going to put this comment up here. I'm going to ask you about this because this is obviously a topic. Mary Kay, Ashley, and I talked about it too. I think I know your answer. I think you're probably going to agree with us on this, but this is Christopher. Dylan Gabriel looks no worse than Flacco. Get him out there. If Cam Ward can start, then Dylan Gabriel should be able to start. I'll say this. I mean, personally, for me in the draft, when I looked at it, it was Cam Ward up here, and then everybody else, like whoever you had number 2, there was a significant gap. So I don't think that's necessarily a fair comparison. Some people might disagree with me, but the Browns Kevin is going to stick with Joe Flacco. Mary Kay, Ashley, and I all agreed that you've got to at least do it for one more game, if not a little longer. What do you think of this quarterback decision? And in your mind, did the timeline move up? So we're not talking next week, but maybe if you were thinking like week 8 or week 9, has the timeline moved up to where you might think, you know what, maybe we'll see Dylan Gabriel in like week 5 or something like that?
For me, the timeline has not moved up, and it has not budged. It did not budge today, and here's why. Again, you're trying to hold on to this locker room, and Kevin is not a guy. He's not a rah-rah guy. So somebody asked me today, what would I do in this situation? Well, every coach has his own philosophy, and Kevin is very calm. He's 2-time coach of the year, so his philosophy works as well. Some coaches come in. I came in and made everybody uncomfortable when we lost games, and we lost games like that. So for me, if you want to keep that locker room and you're not a rah-rah guy, then you need to make sure that the best guys are on the field. Now, if Dylan Gabriel is playing at the same level as Joe Flacco, then I'm all for, hey, let's go with it. But if he is not, and I watched him all camp, just like you, we watched him all camp, I don't think he's there yet. Now, I think he's done some really good things. However, if he's not the guy, you're telling everybody else, you're telling Myles Garrett, and you're telling all these guys who are really playing hard right now, especially on the defensive side of the ball, that, hey, we're going to give this guy a run. I know he hasn't really earned it, and he's still not there yet, but we're going to give him a run. Best guys play. The best guys play. And if it's equal, then I can understand that. But if it's not equal, then it's no question for me, because you got to hold on to that locker room. And if you're not a guy who likes to make things uncomfortable, and Coach Stefanski is not a guy that likes to make everybody uncomfortable, then you better make sure that the best guys play. And I think without question, Joe Flacco, at least, obviously I'm not seeing practice anymore, but through camp, the quarterback competition was not close. It was not close between Joe Flacco and the rest of those guys. And it was not even remotely close. So I don't know. I don't think the time, I will say this, Dan, it's moved up if he's playing better. If he's whenever he is at the level that Joe Flacco is at, and then I would be okay with it, because you better hold, you're going to lose the locker room quick, and you're going to see guys who aren't going to play very hard. And I didn't see that. I saw guys play really, really hard today. They just didn't make enough plays. But if you want to see something happen really fast, play guys because you want to give them a look. That's a bad thing in all levels of football. Guys got to earn the right to play.
Right. And look, to a point in the chat, I'll put this up here, losing 41-17 sends a message to the locker room too. Yes, look, if these performances continue to happen, if Joe Flacco next week plays like he did today, and looks like he can't move and can't handle pressure when it's coming, and like I said, next week is going to be the best football team the Cleveland Browns have played this year, maybe the best football team they're going to play all year. maybe the best defense they're going to play all year. If this keeps compounding, even just next week, like, then yes, you do have to start considering, how does the locker room then respond to Joe Flacco? How does the locker room maybe not start looking at Dylan Gabriel and saying, could this guy do a little better? Could this guy get the ball out faster? Could I get some more touches with this guy? That's a real thing too. So I'm not saying that you can't lose the locker room if you just put Joe Flacco out there every week. But I just don't think one game, a 40-year-old guy, a guy that's been in the league 20 years, as bad as today was, and I know he was bad last year too in Indianapolis, but as bad as today was, you just gotta, I don't know. I just don't have an issue with sticking with him for at least another week. And also just making sure, and I don't know if they have a franchise quarterback on this roster right now, but also, like, are you hurting Dylan Gabriel's long-term development and then eventually Shedeur Sanders' long-term development if you just throw him to the wolves? I don't know that helps you either.
That's fair. The performance on the field, it's a product based, league. And I say that all the time too. So I stand corrected in terms of, like, if he's equal, if the game performance doesn't improve, then I can see, obviously you got to try something. And in football, the biggest change you can make is not at right tackle or defensive tackle. The biggest change you can make trying to get a spark as quarterback. So that, yes, I agree with. But again, throwing to the wolves, throwing it against a Green Bay defense, doing those things. But I'll say this: they have to not hold their head down, and they have to block out the noise. And they've had to do this a long time. And I will continue to be positive, and I will continue to find holes in the Green Bay defense and their offense, just like these coaches will, because that's what you do. If you're a grinder and this is what you do for a living, you got to figure out a way to get over. And the idea that this is the same old Browns and Dylan should play and Shedeur should play, you got to make a decision and kind of live with it and move with it. And it seems like they have a plan for those young guys. Obviously, I'm with you. I don't think one performance from a 40-year-old against a really good defense, and I'm going to say that I'm going to back him even more. I think when your offense is really struggling like they are, and he's a guy who likes to vertically throw down the field but knows that he can't because he's got to protect, I think he started to press a little bit. And that's the first time, the middle of that third quarter, you saw him trying to make plays that weren't there, and you haven't seen him do that. You didn't see him do it during camp, and you definitely didn't see it in the first couple games, even if they didn't throw interception or whatever it is. He just feel like he pressed a little bit, and that's because they can't make plays right now.
Well, and that's the other part of this when we talk about putting one of these young guys out there. This receiving core was not awesome today. Like, I don't think this was just Joe Flacco. Jerry Jeudy had another drop today. Now, he made a really great catch, but then he had a drop on, like, the very next play. Cedric Tillman is just really up and down. Made some nice catches last week. That deflection, hey, heads up play. Nice job on that. Grabbed it with one hand and pulled it in. The Browns were owed that after last week. They needed a little karma like that after those two deflected interceptions last week. So, like, good for him, but other than that, he didn't really have an impact. Isaiah Bond hasn't done anything. Jamari Thrash, who had a really great training camp, hasn't done anything. So I also think a part of this is if they can get this running game figured out, right? Now that Quinshon Judkins is back, it was a little better today. So if you can get this running game pointed in the right direction, if you can get this receiver room figured out, like if you throw Dylan Gabriel out there right now, how much better is it going to look if the receivers aren't getting open or if the receivers aren't making plays for him? So I don't know. I don't know that this was all on Joe. I think some of it might have been on the guys he was throwing to as well.
Well, in the game of football, the quarterback and coordinator always gets way too much credit, but they also get way too much blame. And that's kind of where they're at right now, and that's what happens. He's the guy who touches on every play, and you're right. They're not getting great movement in the run game, but better. The receivers are doing a little bit better job of separating, but not great. They're dropping way too many footballs, and they're dropping way too many footballs in crucial situations. But not only are they dropping balls in crucial situations, but they're taking away deep shot opportunities. If they can make a simple catch and get the second one, then maybe you go play action, take a shot, or something like that. So the drops are not always costing you first downs and costing you interceptions, but sometimes they cost you just rhythm. And they cost you tempo and pace and sense of urgency and the ability to get in and out of the huddle because you got to drop your back because you thought you had a play and then it's a drop and it's kind of a kind of thing. So there's a lot more that comes to it with pace and rhythm and trying to call plays as a coordinator and things like that. So they have got to get it worked out. And when you see when you don't have a ton of super weapons, and you miss a couple things, how it kind of magnifies that. And I still think all those things you're saying, I think David Njoku is the answer here. He's the guy who is proven, and he's the guy who can get you some easy yards and some run after catch. And I think that's very important for them right now.
Just some more Dillon Gabriel talk. Some folks talking about Dillon Gabriel and his mental toughness, and essentially I can't scroll up and find it to put it on the screen, but essentially the idea of like, hey, if this guy's a franchise quarterback, if that's what they believe he is, then he should be able to handle it. He should be able to handle failure. He should be able to handle struggles. And to an extent, I agree. But also, I do think it's okay to have the kid gloves on a little bit. Like, a guy can get overwhelmed out there. Even a really good player can get overwhelmed out there. Can get hit too much. Can get like, I don't think Dillon Gabriel is like a Cam Ward, or to a further extent, a Jaden Daniels, or one of those levels of quarterbacks. So I do think it's okay to kind of look at this, like, if you can play this out a little longer and put him in a situation where it's a little smoother, the plane is running a little better, I just think that would be better for him. And is it protecting him a little bit? Yeah. Does he need protected? Probably not. But I think it's okay to protect him too. If this is some kind of long-term investment you've made, whether you see him as a long-term starter or even a backup long-term.
Joe Flacco's thrown the ball 90 times in 2 games. So that's too many. And if you're saying, so right now, Joe Flacco is the offense. Joe Flacco, you're not running it very well. So is that the kind of pressure you want to put on Dillon Gabriel? And I disagree with the idea that if he's mentally tough, these guys are in the NFL. They're all mentally tough. They're all getting paid a lot of money to play football. Talking with him, he's a guy who's invested. He understands what's going on. But you're right, Dan. These guys can get overwhelmed. And these guys can get overwhelmed by the speed of this game and the complexity of this game and the understanding of this game. And obviously, you can ruin a quarterback quickly in the NFL. You can ruin a quarterback by physically getting – they're not pass protecting very well. So he's 200 pounds. How many shots you're going to allow him to take when Jack Conklin's not in there and DeJuan Jones isn't quite playing the way you thought he would, and things like that. There's a lot of things that ties into it. My question would be for Kevin Stefanski, and I look forward to kind of hearing what you guys have to ask him is, do they have a plan regardless of what happens with Joe Flacco? Is there a plan? Because I would be okay with that too, meaning if Joe Flacco plays great, if Joe Flacco plays poorly, has that changed the plan with those two? And if it hasn't changed the plan, whether they play well or not, I can appreciate that because that tells you there is structure in what they're doing. Whether we like it or not is a different story. But I don't think making quick trigger decisions based on one game helps anybody, especially if it's kind of going against what your plan was, regardless of what their Flacco's performance was.
Okay, before I let you go, because I made you sit here and talk about the quarterback thing this whole time, anything else? I mean, we did talk about special teams. Give me that. Come on. Anything else you really want to talk about today? I mean, for me, I would like the secondary. I was concerned about depth in the secondary coming into the year. I think it got exposed a little bit today with Cam Mitchell and Miles Harden. I think that catch from DeAndre Hopkins on Greg Newsome, I mean, what's he supposed to do there? Mm-hmm. I think that was just a future Hall of Famer making a great play. So that had me a little concerned. Again, I thought the line was awesome again today, but I think they ran out of gas. What's something you want to talk about here before we go?
Well, I want to know what's going on moving forward, because what the Browns want to do is they want to be in man coverage and they want one high hat and they want to do that. And that's what their identity is. And Schwartz is not, he's a pretty stubborn guy, it seems like. And that's why he's been so successful, because he does what he does. But they're going to have to change their mentality a little bit in the secondary, maybe playing a little bit softer, maybe playing a little bit more zone. I don't think they have to change too much up front. But allow people to catch the ball in front of them maybe and work on rallying to the football. There has to be a change because they did get exposed. Mitchell struggled mightily today. Miles Harden struggled, even though he made some plays. They're going to have to figure out what they want to do. That defensive line is elite, and it's not just good, it's elite. They're going to have to, how do we marry the defensive line with the second level and the third level? So for me, I think the running game's getting better. I really do. And I think for me, it's you got to get yourself off the tracks. You got to figure out a way to get off the tracks when everybody's telling you you're bad. How do you get off the tracks? Kevin not being a rah-rah, in your face, make people uncomfortable guy. How does that work moving forward? Does Schwartz have to do it? I don't know what's going to happen there, but they're going to have to figure out how they're going to cover in the secondary, and it can't be press man when those guys can't, some of those guys that you got beat today, those aren't frontline receivers. Obviously, when Zay Flowers beats you, you'll take that. But they competed pretty well against Zay Flowers. Some of their backups struggled with some of the not so great receivers for the Ravens. They're going to see better receivers this year, second, third receivers. So they're going to have to figure something out in that back end with coverage to protect those guys a little bit. Because they can't play press man. Now they can play it occasionally, but they can't be in it as much as Schwartz wants them to be.
Yeah, it's listen, this is a really big test for Kevin Stefanski. And I know people are angry and they want to talk about Kevin's long-term future. We'll talk about that. Like if this team keeps losing, like organically, that topic is going to be right there but nothing's going to happen right now in week 2. So the focus for Kevin and this coaching staff is you play the Packers this week, Super Bowl contender. You play the Lions. I didn't watch that game. I did see the score. I'm going to watch it here in the next day or two. Seems like they looked a lot like the Lions today when they played the Bears. You got to go to London and you got to play the Vikings, who will have been over there already. And that's a good football team. Now I'll see what they're doing right now in this Sunday night game. They're down 6-0. But I still think that's a good, well-coached football team who's going to have a rest advantage on you. And then you come home and you play Pittsburgh in Pittsburgh. And Pittsburgh's coming off their bye week, so they're going to have a huge rest advantage in their own stadium, which is one of the toughest places in the NFL to win. So this is about as stiff a test, Lance, as I think Kevin has faced, because a few people have thrown in the chat 0-6, and this is going to sound funny. I think it's really hard to go 0-6 in the NFL. I lived through 1-31. I covered 1-31, but you don't see a lot of 0-6 football teams because I think in the NFL, which is such most games, and obviously not today, so many one-score games, right? So many games come down to a kick or a bounce goes one way or this way. You know what I mean? You can usually stumble into a win somehow. So this team could very well pull an upset in the next few weeks. But Kevin is facing a very, very big challenge here because, man, it would have been nice to have gotten that win against Cincinnati because at least then you'd be 1-1. And okay, you won the game you were supposed to and you lost the game you were supposed to. Let's move on. But that's not where they are. They're 0-2. And he's got to make sure this doesn't snowball. Like you said, they got to get off the tracks.
Well, and if you're a coach at any level in the game of football, this is what you live for. And it's easy to coach when you're winning. And everybody tells you how good you are. And it's easy to coach. Everybody comes with great energy. But now you're right. Now everything rolls downhill at Kevin Stefanski now. And when they're losing and people are questioning his future, this is when you're backed into a corner. Do you sit there and take it, or do you fight your way out of the corner? And that's what you want to see out of these guys is how are they going to fight themselves out of this corner? Because I guarantee you, everybody tells me this week, I'm sick of that. Your positive attitude because that's the way it's got to be. You can't go in there and what are you going in there going? Oh, it's Green Bay. We have no chance. No, you got to go in there and you got to believe you can win. And that starts in practice. That starts with your mentality. They have good practice habits. They're doing things right. They're not unorganized. But this is when it's fun as a coach. This is when you decide who you are, your toughness. Because again, it's easy. And the thing is, they have all these tough games in a row. No one feels bad for them. No one cares. No one's going to take it easy on them. So you either sit there and take it and lay there, or you get up and fight. And that's what's going to change the culture here with the Browns. Is they have to get off the tracks, get off the canvas, and start finding ways to win. However they do that, sneak it out and figure it out. And that for me, that starts with your head coach, but that starts with your mentality. Are you buying into what everybody's saying? Because if you are, then you're going to lose. You got to believe you're going to win. It doesn't matter what your record is. That's what you get paid this money for. Go out there and get in practice and figure out how you can win and how you can beat the Packers, and nobody's going to think you're going to beat them. Figure out how to do it.
Right. Well, and especially for a coach who won Coach of the Year because he figured out ways to win in 2023. He figured it out. You figured it out with PJ Walker. He figured it out with I don't know. I don't think they did win a DTR game. He won a game with Dorian Thompson-Robinson at quarterback. Figured it out when Joe Flacco came in off the couch, right? Now, they got killed in that playoff game, but they figured it out. And this is a coach that has done that before. And you're right, like nobody feels bad for this team. Nobody wants to make excuses for this team, and they shouldn't because this is the NFL. Great. Green Bay might be one of, if not the best teams in the NFL. You still got to beat them. They're coming to your place. It's your job to beat them.
Yep.
Figure it out.
Find a hole.
Figure it out.
Yep. Find holes. What do they don't watch more film? Do more than what you're doing now is not enough. Watch more film. Go live in practice. Make practice longer or shorter. Whatever it is, figure it out. Because Green Bay is a very good football team, but they're beatable. You just took a Hall of Fame quarterback, 2 of them, and shut them down. You just took the best tailback, in the league and shut them down. So you can do some things. You're not, you have talent on this team. You got to figure it out. No one feels bad. Go figure it out. And I think, and I'm going to say they're going to, because that's the type of mentality I hope they have.
Oh. Are you going to pick the Browns to win this game, Lance? Are we going to do our preview pod Thursday, and you're going to pick the Browns to win this game?
I don't know. You got me in coaching mode right now.
I've been scared of this game for, I don't know, since I watched the first. I mean, I've been scared of this game all offseason, but then I watched that first Packers game, and I'm like, oh, this team is really good.
Well, it's funny as we start talking here, I get a little goosebumpy. I get a little fired up talking about because I'm thinking about when you go in tomorrow and everybody's kind of hanging their head and the coaches are questioning themselves. And as the head guy, it was great. You go in and you just kind of however he does it. He's 2-time coach of the year, but I love that. So yeah, there's a chance for sure, especially when I watch film, and if they have some favorable matchups, yep, there's a chance I will pick them, because that's the only way they're going to find a way eventually, and that will happen. And we'll see. I haven't broke down the film yet, but I'm looking forward to it.
Well, I'll tell you what, your left tackle. I'd like your left tackle to stay in the game for every single snap. That would be.
Yes, that would
be a good start.
That's a struggle, and they're gonna have to figure that out, because both sides are not real good right now.
Yeah. Nick in the chat. Nick in the chat is I think our one optimist in the chat. So I'll give Nick a little love for you, Lance. He says nobody's scared of Jordan Love. Just don't turn it over. For the love of God, stop turning it over. Yeah, I mean, I feel like we've been saying that for 2 years here. And I will say, look, I like Jordan Love. I don't think Jordan Love is in the discussion as a top 5 quarterback. I think Jordan Love has his flaws. I think he has a brilliant play caller in Matt LaFleur. And I think he's a good quarterback. Don't get me wrong. I also watched him lose a bowl game to Kent State years and years, years ago.
At Utah State, you better believe it. I remember it like it was yesterday. No, I agree with you. And he's not Joe Burrow. And you're not Lamar Jackson.
No.
And maybe you get a pick 6. And, you tell the defense this week. Schwartz goes in and says, he throws people under the bus and they fight at practice. You got to make it uncomfortable a little bit in practice. And maybe, he goes in and says, listen, we're not getting any help. We're gonna create some short fields. There's a way to win. There's a way to get this thing rolling. And being negative ain't it. But I'm with you. I remember that game. And every time I see Jordan Love, that's the first thing I thought, because he was very average against the Flashes that night. So I'm with you. It can happen.
And I think he's good. I think he's a good quarterback, but he's not in that class of oh my God, better watch out for Jordan. He's at least in that second tier of quarterbacks. So yeah, I think that's kind of, again, that's sort of where you find maybe you can take advantage of that. This is going to be the worst quarterback you've faced in 3 games. Still very good though. On the other side, you got to deal with Micah Parsons, and you got to deal with a defense that fly. I mean, every time the 2 games I've watched this year, that defense flies. So you're going to have to deal with that.
Yeah, and don't worry about anything else after it, right? Think about what are you going to do tomorrow. What are you going to do tomorrow to get better for next Sunday? Don't worry about the games coming up. Don't worry about going to London. Don't worry about how tough the schedule is. Simply worry about the Packers and how you beat the Packers, and be singularly focused on that, and you'll have every chance. There was a chance today, 5 minutes left in the game, and I wrote this down. This is my last thing with you, is I wrote this down when I was like, I'm going to tell this to Dan. 4 minutes, just under 5 minutes to go, it's 20-10 in the third quarter. It's 20-10. So they were in the game. It's almost through the end of the third quarter, and then it snowballed. But it wasn't like they were just physically dominated all game by a really good football team, and that's what I thought could happen. That didn't happen up front. So they can hang in with anybody. That defense will keep them in every game if the offense can do their part.
Lance, were you a Friday Night Lights guy?
Oh, yeah.
The show?
Oh, yeah.
The show?
Okay. Yeah, oh, yeah.
I've been rewatching. I started another, I don't know, probably my 5th or 6th Friday Night Lights rewatch.
Oh, yeah.
You got me. You've got me in this has been the last 10 minutes of this podcast has been your version of Friday Night Lights. I feel like we should give everybody just a real quick, clear eyes, full hearts.
Yep. And
come on.
You want me to give you clear? Well, what do you want me to give you? I'm sorry, I lost it.
I just said it. I just said it.
Oh, the clear eyes?
Yeah. All right, we'll try this again. I feel like we need to give everybody a good hearty, clear eyes, full hearts.
I'm lost. Dan, you're gonna kill me.
Can't.
I'm lost. Give it to me. Well, give it to me. I lost it.
Wow. This hurts. This hurts a lot.
I know.
Can't.
I lost
Clear
it.
eyes, full hearts, can't lose.
I got
You gotta
you.
watch Friday Night Lights again.
It's been a while. Here's what happens when I get talking about like everybody telling me how bad you are and stuff. I get like my brain gets like I'm like in a tunnel right now. I want to be there tomorrow. I'll be like, there is literally the people in that room tomorrow are the only ones that think they can win. Literally tomorrow when they're in their staff meetings. That's where I'm at. So, I won't miss that next time. I promise you. I remember now.
All right. That's fine. You're forgiven this time.
Yeah,
all right.
Exactly. One time. I make one mistake every once in a while.
I guess I'll have you back on Tuesday. We are gonna wrap up our post game edition of the Orange and Brown Talk podcast. There, appreciate everybody that was in the chat there with us. Even if I wasn't sharing your chats, I was reading all of them. So really appreciate everybody being in there. Whether you're a Football Insider subscriber, a YouTube subscriber, one of our pod subscribers. Real quickly, let me just tell you about that stuff. If you're not a Football Insider, it's cleveland.com/Browns, the blue banner at the top of the page. You can become one of our text subscribers. You get a newsletter in your inbox every day that is written by either me, Ashley, Mary Kay, somebody else on our staff. So you'll get that in your inbox every day. So that's one thing. If you're watching us live on YouTube, which you are right now, you got to find us on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Search Orange and Brown Talk. Get subscribed. If you're listening to this after the fact and you're like, man, I want to be involved in this live show, our YouTube is Cleveland Browns on cleveland.com. Trying to go live every post game at 8 p.m. on Sundays. And then, of course, our pod is 5 days a week. So I think that's everything you need to know. That was Lance, who was just on here. Mary Kay and Ashley were with me earlier. I appreciate everyone for listening.